The taste of champagne lingered on my tongue while my sister's laughter echoed in my memory. I woke to the rhythm of black water slapping against the hull. The GPS was smashed, the radio wires were ripped out, and I was drifting 20 miles offshore. My family left me to die so they could steal my fortune. They forgot that I excel at the boring details, and I used those very details to destroy them. My name is Madeline Evans, and the first thing I realized when consciousness clawed its way back into my brain was that I was not supposed to be awake. The sensation was not the groggy, cotton-wrapped haze of a champagne hangover. I knew hangovers. I knew the sharp dehydration of too much vintage Dom Perignon from the endless charity galas my sister, Sloane, dragged me to. This was different. This was a chemical sledgehammer. My skull felt fractured from the inside out, a rhythmic thumping behind my eyes that matched the slap of water against fiberglass. My mouth tasted like copper and ash. I tried to sit up, and the world tilted violently to the left. I was lying on the aft deck lounge of the Caldera, my father's 80-foot custom yacht. The teak decking was cool against my cheek, wet with sea spray. I pushed myself up, my muscles trembling with a weakness that terrified me. The sun was gone. That was the first visual alarm. When I had taken that last sip of wine handed to me by Grant, my fiancé. With that dazzling practiced smile of his, the sun had been high and bright over the Florida coast. Now, the sky was a bruised sheet of charcoal and slate. I grabbed the railing to steady myself. The horizon was empty. "Sloane," I called out. My voice was a croak, barely audible over the wind. "Grant, Dad." Silence answered me, not the peaceful silence of the open ocean, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a crime scene. I stumbled toward the main cabin, my bare feet slipping on the damp wood. The glass sliding doors were open. Inside, the salon was pristine. The white leather sofas were untouched. The crystal decanters on the bar were secured in their racks. It looked exactly like the floating palace Carter Evans used to impress potential investors in Crown Tide Maritime, but it felt hollow. "Hello," I shouted. Louder this time. I checked the master stateroom. Empty. The guest cabins. Empty. The galley. Empty. Panic began to rise in my chest, a cold tide matching the one outside. But I forced it down. Panic was inefficient. Panic was what Sloane would do. I was the boring one. I was the accountant, the auditor, the girl who liked spreadsheets more than socialites. I needed data. I made my way to the bridge. This was where the answers would be. The captain's chair was empty. I gripped the console, my eyes scanning the instruments, and that was when the reality of my situation crashed into me with the force of a rogue wave. The GPS screen was shattered. It looked like someone had taken a heavy winch handle to it. The liquid crystal display was a spiderweb of black and gray dead pixels. I reached for the VHF radio handset to call the Coast Guard, but the cord came away in my hand. It had been ripped cleanly out of the dashboard. I checked the backup handheld radio charger mounted on the bulkhead. Empty. They had been thorough. I patted the pockets of my linen trousers. My phone was gone. I looked around the bridge for the ignition keys. Gone. I ran back out to the aft deck and looked over the stern. The hydraulic platform was lowered, and the 20-foot rigid inflatable boat we used for shore excursions was missing. I was alone. I was drifting. And based on the ache in my bones and the fading light, I had been unconscious for hours. I leaned over the side. Staring into the dark water, the realization settled over me, cold and absolute. This was not a prank. This was not an accident. My family, the people who shared my blood, had left me here. They had drugged me, disabled the navigation, taken the only way off, and left me on a dead ship in the middle of the Atlantic. I looked at the sky again. The clouds were banking low and heavy in the northeast, a storm front, and looking at the drift of the water, the texture of the waves, I realized something else. I was not just drifting aimlessly. The current here was strong. Pulling southeast, the caldera was dead in the water, a $5 million piece of debris, drifting straight toward the commercial shipping lanes. If the storm did not capsize me, 100,000-ton container ship would run me over in the dark. They would never even feel the impact. I sank to the floor of the bridge, hugging my knees. The chemical headache pulsed. I could picture them right now. Sloane would be fake crying to the press. Carter would be somber, talking about a tragic accident at sea. Grant would be looking at diamond watches on his phone, spending the money he thought he was about to inherit. I was supposed to die here. I was supposed to be a tragedy. I closed my eyes and took a breath. 1 breath, 2, 3, stop it. Madeline, I told myself. Look at the problem. Assess the variables. I stood up. My legs were still shaky, but my mind was clearing. I was the boring daughter, the one who spent her university summers working at the gritty commercial docks in Brunswick, because I wanted to understand how the shipping logistics actually worked. Not just how the profits looked on a balance sheet. While Sloane was partying in Ibiza, I was wearing grease-stained coveralls, learning how to bleed a diesel fuel line and read a paper chart. They thought I was just a rich girl with a calculator. They forgot I knew how machines worked. I went to the technical locker under the helm station. It was locked. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher from the wall mount and smashed the lock. 1 strike, 2 strikes, the wood splintered. Inside, I found what I prayed would be there, a basic toolkit. Screwdrivers, wrenches, a multimeter, and shoved in the back, behind a stack of expired flare manuals, was a folded paper chart of the Georgia and Florida coastline. It was old, stained with coffee, but it was gold. I spread the chart out on the navigation table. I looked at the compass, thankfully. A magnetic analog compass didn't need wires or batteries. We were drifting heading 120 degrees. Based on the wind speed and the time of day, I estimated I was about 20 miles offshore. I grabbed the toolkit and headed for the engine room. The door to the engine compartment was heavy and insulated. When I opened it, the heat hit me a stagnant, oily warmth that smelled of diesel and hot metal. The caldera was powered by twin heavy-duty marine diesel engines. They were massive, silent beasts painted pristine white. I shined the flashlight from the toolkit onto the starboard engine. I checked the starter motor. The solenoid wires had been disconnected. Not cut, just unscrewed and pulled away. It was clean work. Probably Carter. He knew enough about boats to be dangerous. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "Okay. Basics, fuel, air, compression, spark." I checked the fuel filters. They were full. The sea strainers were clear. They had not sabotaged the engine internals. They had just killed the ignition system to make it look like a mechanical failure if the boat was ever found. They wanted it to look like I had drifted helplessly while the electronics failed. I stripped the insulation off the ends of the starter wires with a pair of wire cutters. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. I needed to bypass the ignition key. I needed to bridge the solenoid directly. It was dangerous. If there were fuel vapors in the bilge, a spark could blow the hatch off and take me with it. I sniffed the air. Just old oil and rubber. No raw diesel smell. I took a heavy screwdriver with a rubber handle. I positioned myself over the starter motor of the starboard engine. "Please," I whispered. I jammed the screwdriver across the terminals. Sparks flew blue and angry, hissing in the dark. I flinched but held the metal down. The starter motor whined. A high-pitched mechanical scream. The engine turned over. Chug, chug, chug. It coughed and died. "Come on," I gritted out. "Come on, you expensive piece of junk." I tried again. More sparks. The smell of ozone filled the small space. The engine cranked. Slower this time. The batteries were holding. But for how long? On the 3rd try, the beast roared. The engine caught with a thunderous shudder that vibrated through the soles of my feet. The deep, rhythmic thrum of the diesel leveled out into a steady idle. The smell of exhaust began to fill the room, but to me, it was the sweetest perfume on earth. I dropped the screwdriver and leaned back against the bulkhead, sliding down until I hit the metal grating of the floor. The vibration of the engine felt like life. I was not drifting anymore. I had power. And then, it hit me. The adrenaline crashed, leaving a void that grief rushed to fill. I buried my face in my greasy hands and let out a sob. A single, jagged sound that ripped through my throat. I saw my father's face. I saw Sloane's smirk. I saw Grant's hand offering me that glass of wine. They hated me. They hated me enough to kill me. The realization was sharper than the headache. But the sob lasted exactly 1 second. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, smearing oil across my cheek. Crying would not steer the boat. Crying would not get me back to shore. Crying was a variable that added no value to the equation. I stood up, wiping my hands on my pants. I needed to check the port engine. If I could get both running, I could outrun the storm. I turned to the other side of the engine room and froze. There was a sound coming from the small service bay at the far rear of the compartment, a storage area usually reserved for spare parts and cleaning supplies. It was a rhythmic, wheezing sound. I gripped the heavy screwdriver like a weapon. My heart hammered against my ribs. Had they left someone behind to make sure I died? Was someone waiting for me to fix the boat so they could finish the job? "Who is there?" I shouted. My voice was fierce, echoing off the metal walls. The sound stopped. Then, a groan, a low, pained sound that was definitely human. I stepped forward, raising the flashlight. The beam cut through the shadows of the service bay. Huddled in the corner, wedged between a crate of oil filters and the hull, was a man. His hands were zip-tied together. His shirt was torn, and his face was a swollen mask of purple and red bruises. One eye was completely swollen shut. I gasped, nearly dropping the light. Owen. It was Owen Price, my father's personal assistant, the man who managed Carter's schedule, booked his flights, and carried his secrets. He was the most loyal employee Crown Tide had. He worshipped my father. I rushed over, dropping the screwdriver to fumble for the wire cutters in my pocket. "Owen, my God, what happened?" He flinched when I touched him, his good eye flying open wide in terror. When he saw it was me, his body went limp with relief. "Madeline," he wheezed. Blood stained his teeth. "You are alive." I cut the zip ties binding his wrists. His skin was raw where the plastic had dug in. "They left us," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "They left both of us." Owen tried to sit up but groaned and slumped back against the hull. He coughed, and it sounded wet. "I saw them," he whispered. "I walked into the galley when Sloane was crushing the pills, into your wine." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean air. "You saw them drug me." "Carter saw me watching," Owen rasped. He grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong for a dying man. He said I was a liability. He said I knew too much about the accounts anyway. They beat me, threw me in here. They think I'm unconscious. They think the boat will sink in the storm or get hit in the lane." "We are not sinking," I said firmly. "I started the starboard engine. We are going home. Owen?" "No." He squeezed my wrist harder, his eyes wide with panic. "No police? Not yet. Carter owns the Port Authority in Brunswick. He owns the sheriff in Camden. If we go back, if they know we are alive, they will finish it. We have to do something. Owen, we cannot just disappear." Owen reached into his pocket with a shaking hand. He pulled out a small, black object. It was a plastic Ziploc bag, and inside was a tiny SD card. "I knew," he whispered. "I knew Carter was getting paranoid. I started making copies of the audio, of the cameras." He pressed the bag into my palm. "I recorded them. Madeline, in the salon, before they grabbed me. I have them planning it. I have Sloane laughing about it." I looked down at the tiny chip in my hand. It weighed nothing, less than a gram. But as I closed my fingers around it, I felt the weight of it. This was not just evidence. This was a weapon. "They think you are dead," Owen said, his voice fading as exhaustion took him. "They think I am dead. That is our only advantage." I looked at the bruised man, then at the roaring engine, and finally at the SD card in my fist. The tears were gone completely now. In their place was something cold, hard, and mathematical. My family had built a fortress of lies and money. They thought they were untouchable gods. But they had made a critical error in their calculations. They thought Madeline Evans was just a boring accountant. I pocketed the SD card and helped Owen sit up. "You are right, Owen," I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, steady, deep, and utterly devoid of mercy. "We do not go to the police, not today." I looked at the engine gauges. The temperature was holding steady. "Today," I said. "We survive. Tomorrow. We start the audit." The rhythmic thrum of the starboard engine became the heartbeat of my new reality. It was a steady, mechanical reassurance that I was still alive, even if the people who shared my DNA had bet $60 million that I would not be. I sat on the metal grating of the engine room floor, watching Owen breathe. He was stabilizing. Though his face was a map of violence, every wheezing breath he took was a testament to how sloppy my father had become. Carter Evans was usually a man of precision, but desperation makes even the most calculated sharks messy. And make no mistake, my family was desperate. To understand why I was floating 20 miles off the coast of Georgia with a battered assistant and a stolen fortune in my head. You have to understand the ecosystem of the Evans family. We were not a family in the traditional sense. We were a boardroom with a shared last name. My father, Carter Evans, did not understand love. He understood leverage. He understood return on investment. To Carter, a child was not a legacy. A child was an asset class. If you performed well, you were a blue-chip stock, worthy of attention and resources. If you underperformed, you were a liability to be divested. And then there was my sister, Sloane. Sloane was 3 years older than me, and beautiful in the way a predatory orchid is beautiful. She measured her self-worth in engagement metrics, gala invites, and the envy of women she called friends. Sloane did not have hobbies. She had photo shoots. She did not have conversations. She had press releases. To her, I was an embarrassment. I was the sister who wore unbranded linen shirts and comfortable shoes. I was the sister who left the parties early to read forensic accounting journals. They called me the boring one. Madeline the monotone, Sloane used to joke at dinner parties, swirling her Pinot Noir while our guests politely chuckled. Maddie would rather audit a lemonade stand than drink the lemonade. She was right. I loved the audit. I loved the clarity of numbers. People lie. They smile to your face while holding a knife behind their back. They say they love you while they are calculating your net worth. But numbers never lie. A balance sheet does not care about your feelings. A ledger has no agenda. If the numbers do not add up, there's always a reason, usually a human one, buried in the dark. I just never thought I would be the error they were trying to correct. The root of this entire maritime execution went back to my grandfather, Walter Hale. He was the founder of Crown Tide Maritime, a man of salt and iron who built the company from a single tugboat into a logistics empire. He was also the only person in my family who actually saw me. He saw that while Sloane was spending thousands on handbags, I was asking questions about fuel surcharges and shipping manifests. When Walter died last year, he dropped a nuclear bomb on the Evans family dynamic. He bypassed Carter. He bypassed Sloane. He left the controlling interest in Crown Tide Maritime and a personal trust fund of $60 million directly to me. I remember the reading of the will. Carter had sat there, his face a mask of polite grief, waiting for his coronation, when the lawyer read my name. The air left the room. It was vacuum-sealed silence. My father did not yell. He did not throw a tantrum. He just turned to me, his eyes dead and cold, and said, "That is a lot of responsibility for a girl who does not like to take risks." But Walter was smart. He knew his son-in-law. He knew Carter was a man who spent money faster than he earned it, leveraging the company to fund a lifestyle of private jets and bad real estate deals. So Walter put a lock on the vault. The terms were specific. I would come into full control of the trust and the voting shares upon my 25th birthday. Until then, the assets were held in a blind trust, but there was a clause, a tiny standard legal clause that my father had obviously memorized and dissected 1,000 times in the dark. If the primary beneficiary me were to die, or be declared legally dead or missing, before the age of 25, the trust would be dissolved and the assets would revert to the next of kin. Carter and Sloane. I looked down at my watch, which miraculously was still ticking on my wrist. Today was Tuesday. My birthday was Friday. I was 72 hours away from inheriting $60 million and the power to fire my father. That was why they had invited me on this trip. The reconciliation voyage, Carter had called it. He had sent me a long, emotional email 2 weeks ago, talking about how the stress of the business transition had strained our relationship. He wanted to fix it. He wanted us to be a family again. Just the four of us, Carter, Sloane, me, and Grant on the caldera for a few days of sun and fishing before the big birthday bash in Savannah. I had wanted to believe him. That is the pathetic part. Even the auditor in me, the girl who looks for the discrepancy in every spreadsheet, wanted to believe that her father actually loved her. I wanted to believe that for one weekend, I could just be Madeline the daughter, not Madeline the obstacle. Grant, I whispered the name, and the taste was bitter. Grant Hale, my fiancé. No relation to my grandfather, despite the last name, which he always joked was a sign of destiny. He was handsome in that rugged, catalog-ready way. He told everyone he was a yacht interior specialist, which was a fancy way of saying he helped rich people pick out beige cushions for their floating tax shelters. I thought he was the one thing in my life that was mine. He listened to me talk about tax codes. He held my hand when the pressure of the inheritance got too heavy. Grant is in on it, Owen said. I jumped slightly. I had thought Owen was asleep. He was looking at me with his one good eye, shifting painfully against the bulkhead. I know, I said softly. I know he is. Do you know why? Owen asked. His voice was raspy, like sandpaper on stone. I shook my head. I assumed he just wanted to be the husband of the heiress. Why kill me if we got married? He would have access to the money anyway. He could not wait, Owen coughed. And Carter owns him. Owen struggled to sit up straighter, his face contorting with effort. I handle Carter's personal ledger, the one he keeps off the company books. About 3 months ago, Carter wired a massive sum to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. $400,000. My eyes widened. $400,000 for what? For Grant, Owen said. Your fiancé has a gambling problem. Madeline. Not poker with the boys. Real gambling. Sports betting. High-stakes underground tables in Miami. He was in the hole deep. The people he owed, they do not send collection letters. They send guys with baseball bats. It clicked. The pieces fell into place with the sickening precision of a well-oiled machine. Grant had been stressed lately. He had been distracted. I thought it was pre-wedding jitters. I thought he was worried about the guest list. Carter bought his debt, I said, the realization cold in my stomach. Carter paid off the sharks. Yes, Owen confirmed. Carter bought the debt, and in exchange, he bought Grant. He told Grant that if he helped with this transition, that not only would the debt be wiped clean, but he would get a seat on the board of Crown Tide once you were gone. Carter promised him a salary of $200,000 a year for doing nothing. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. So that is my market value. My father gets the company, Sloane gets the trust fund, and Grant, he sells me out for a cleared ledger and a fake job. They have been planning this for a month, Owen said. Why do you think Carter has been so obsessed with the security upgrades on the caldera lately? I frowned. He said he was worried about corporate espionage. He said competitors were trying to spy on our trade routes. Paranoia, Owen corrected. Carter is projecting. He thinks everyone is as dirty as he is. He had me install high-definition audio recorders in the salon and the master stateroom. He wanted to catch anyone whispering against him. He wanted leverage on his business partners if he invited them on board. Wait, I said, remembering the SD card in my pocket. You said you got the recordings. The irony. Owen wheezed, a faint bloody smile touching his lips. He wanted those cameras and microphones to catch his enemies. Instead, they caught him plotting the murder of his daughter, the system records to a hidden server in the bridge. But it also creates a localized backup on the secure drive in the salon entertainment unit. Carter forgot about the backup. He is not technical. He thinks cloud is magic, but I knew. When I saw them crushing the pills, I went to the unit and pulled the card. I ran my thumb over the small plastic square in my pocket. That tiny chip contained the soul of my family. It contained the voice of my father finalizing my death. I did not understand one thing, I said, looking at the white diesel engine. Why the elaborate show? Why drag me out here? Why not just a car accident or an overdose at home? Because of the clause, Owen said. The will says declared dead or missing if you die at home. There is an autopsy. There is a police investigation. There are toxicology reports. If they find the sedatives, it looks like murder. Carter could not risk a murder investigation. It takes too long. The assets would be frozen during the inquiry. He took a breath, wincing. But the sea is clean. A tragic accident. You fell overboard at night. You had been drinking. The grieving family searched for hours, but could not find you. The Coast Guard comes. They do a search pattern for 2 days. They find nothing. After 48 hours, with the currents out here, they call off the search. You are presumed lost at sea. And on Friday, I finished the thought. On my 25th birthday, Carter files an emergency motion with the probate court. He presents the Coast Guard report stating I am lost and presumed dead. He asks for an expedited transfer of executive control to stabilize the company during this tragedy. Exactly, Owen said. It is not a murder, Madeline. It is a corporate restructuring. It is a hostile takeover of a human life. It was brilliant. It was evil, sociopathic, and absolutely brilliant. It played to all their strengths. Carter's ability to manipulate the narrative, Sloane's ability to act the victim, Grant's ability to be the charming, grieving fiancé, and it relied on one crucial variable, that I was incompetent. They bet on the fact that if I somehow woke up before the ocean swallowed me, I would panic. They bet that I would cry, scream, and die of exposure or dehydration. They bet that I, the boring girl who spent her life in libraries and lecture halls, would have no idea how to hotwire a marine diesel engine. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. I stood up and walked over to the workbench. I picked up a rag and wiped the rest of the grease from my hands. My headache was still there, throbbing in time with the engine, but the fog was gone. 72 hours, I said to the room. They need me to be gone for 72 hours. They will be back at the marina in St. Simon's by morning, Owen said. They will have the story ready, the tears ready. Let them cry, I said. Let them put on their show. Let Sloane pick out her black dress. Let Carter draft his press release. I looked at the chart I had spread out on the small table. I traced the line from our current position to the coast. We are not going to St. Simon's, I said. That is Carter's territory. We are going to Fernandina. I know a place, a small private dock. We go in quiet. We disappear. And then? Owen asked. I turned to him. The girl who wanted her father's love was gone. She had drowned somewhere back there in the dark water. The woman standing in the engine room was the CEO of her own survival. And then, I said, we let them think they won. We let them sign the papers. We let them commit the fraud. We let them dig the grave so deep that when the dirt comes down, they will never climb out. I checked the fuel gauges. We had enough to make the coast if we ran at low RPMs. Get comfortable, Owen, I said, reaching for the door to the bridge. I have some navigation to do, and you need to rest, because in 3 days, we are going to a birthday party. I climbed the ladder back to the bridge, the salt air hitting my face. The storm was closer now, the wind picking up, whipping my hair across my face. But I didn't feel the cold. I felt a burning, precise anger. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to turn Madeline Evans into a footnote in a legal filing. I gripped the wheel of the Caldera. It was heavy and unresponsive without the hydraulic assist fully primed, but I forced it to turn. I watched the compass needle swing. I was not just a daughter. I was the majority shareholder, and I was about to call a board meeting they would never forget. The storm front that had threatened us at sea became our cover. By the time the coastline of Florida appeared as a smudge of darker gray against the night sky, the rain was coming down in sheets, a vertical curtain that blurred the world into static. I steered the caldera not toward the bright, manicured lights of the St. Simon's Marina, but south, toward the murky, tangled inlets of Fernandina. I knew this coast. I knew the shifting sandbars and the hidden channels that the weekend yachtsmen avoided because they were terrified of scratching their gel coat. I was not afraid of scratches. I was afraid of being seen. We bypassed the main Port Authority docks. My father, Carter Evans, treated the Port Authority like his private country club. He paid for their fundraisers. He sponsored their equipment upgrades. If a crown-tied vessel or his personal yacht pinged on their radar, a courtesy call would be made. "Mr. Evans, we see your boat coming in." And just like that, the hunting party would be waiting for us at the pier. Instead, I guided the 80-foot yacht into a decaying private slip tucked behind an abandoned cannery. It was a place I had found years ago during a summer research project on estuarine erosion, a place where the piers were rotting wood and the only tenants were rust bucket shrimp trawlers and people who did not want to be found. "Tie her off," I ordered Owen. My voice was tight. Owen, limping and clutching his ribs, scrambled to throw the heavy lines over the rusted cleats. We did not bother with fenders. We did not bother with shore power. We were abandoning a $5 million vessel in a graveyard of iron and wood. "We cannot leave it here forever," Owen wheezed as he climbed back onto the deck. "Someone will notice a super yacht parked next to a garbage scow." "We do not need forever," I said, grabbing the waterproof bag I had filled with the basics, the toolkit, the first aid supplies, and the few clothes I had found in the crew quarters. "We just need tonight." I wiped the rain from my face and looked at the boat one last time. It looked like a ghost ship in the gloom. "Let's go." We walked a mile in the rain to reach the main road. Every pair of headlights that swept past us made my heart hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. I felt naked, exposed. I was Madeline Evans, the heiress, walking down a muddy shoulder of Highway A1A in grease-stained linen, dragging a half-dead accountant. "We need a police station," Owen said, shivering. "Madeline, we have the evidence. We go to the state troopers, not the local guys." I stopped walking and turned to him. The rain plastered my hair to my skull. "No. They tried to kill us." "Think, Owen," I snapped. "Who is the biggest donor to the governor's re-election campaign, who sits on the Civilian Oversight Board for Regional Transit Security? Carter Evans." I stepped closer to him. "If we walk into a police station right now, looking like this, raving about a conspiracy, they will run my name, and the first call they make will not be to the FBI. It will be to my father. 'Mr. Evans, we found your daughter. She seems confused, distraught. Do not worry. We will hold her until you get here.'" Owen slumped. He knew I was right. In our world, the law was flexible. It bent toward money. "We need shelter," I said, "and we need to go invisible." We found a motel 3 miles down the road. It was one of those places with a neon sign that buzzed like an angry insect, advertising color television and weekly rates. The clerk was behind bulletproof glass and did not look up from his magazine when I slid a credit card under the slot. It was a generic Visa, issued by a credit union in Nebraska. I had opened it 4 years ago. A paranoid little safety net I had created after Sloan made a joke about how Dad could cut off your allowance anytime he wanted. I had kept it hidden in the lining of my laptop bag, which, by some miracle, had been in the crew mess where Owen had been hiding, rather than in my stateroom. Carter knew about my bank accounts. He knew about my trust. He did not know about the Nebraska credit union with a $5,000 limit. "Room 12, the clerk grunted. Sliding a plastic keycard back, the room smelled of stale tobacco and lemon disinfectant. I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. Then I wedged a chair under the handle. Only then did I let myself breathe. I made Owen sit on the bed and stripped off his wet shirt. His torso was a canvas of violence, deep purple bruising around his ribs, lacerations from the zip ties. I used the first aid kit from the boat to clean his cuts and wrap his ribs. He hissed in pain but didn't complain. "The phone," I said, pointing to the landline on the nightstand. "Do not touch it. Do not touch the TV. Smart TVs have microphones. We are in a blackout. Owen," I took a breath and reached into my waterproof bag. I pulled out the tablet I had swiped from the yacht's crew lounge. It was a cheap device used for controlling the entertainment system, but it had a card slot. "Show me," I said. Owen reached into his pocket and produced the SD card. His hand shook as he passed it to me. I slotted it in. The screen flickered to life. There were 3 files. I clicked the first one. The video was grainy. High contrast black and white from the night vision camera hidden in the salon's smoke detector. I saw myself first. I was slumped on the white leather sofa, my head lolling back. I looked like a marionette with its strings cut. Then, Sloane entered the frame. She was wearing a shimmering silver dress, holding a glass of wine. She looked at my unconscious body, and God help me. She smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was a genuine, amused grin. "She is heavier than she looks." Sloane's voice came through the tablet's tinny speakers. "All that boring weight." Grant stepped into view. My stomach twisted. He looked annoyed, not remorseful. He grabbed my ankles. "Just grab her arms. Sloane, careful with the rug. This is Persian." "Careful with the rug," I whispered to the empty motel room. He was dragging my body, and he was worried about the rug. They hauled me toward the sliding glass doors. The video cut. I played the second file. This one was audio only. It was crystal clear. "Are you sure the dosage was right?" That was Grant. Nervous. "She is out. Grant, stop whining." Sloane. Then, a third voice. Deeper, smoother. My father. "Stop bickering." Carter's voice filled the motel room, carrying that terrifying, calm authority I had spent my life trying to please. "Get the tender ready. Take her out to the deep channel. Make sure the weights are secure. I do not want her floating back up before the birthday." "What about the assistant?" Grant asked. Pricey was looking at me funny in the galley. "I will handle Owen," Carter said. The tone was dismissive, like he was talking about a broken printer. "Clean it up. No fingerprints. No mistakes. I want the grieving process to start at 0800 tomorrow. We have a press conference to schedule." I paused the recording. I felt like I was going to throw up. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I stared at myself in the cracked mirror. The woman looking back was pale, with dark circles under her eyes, but her jaw was set. They talked about killing me like it was a logistics problem, like it was a shipping delay. I walked back into the room. Owen was holding the tablet now, scrolling through a folder of data files. "There is more," he said quietly. "What could be more than them confessing to murder?" I asked. "The backup plan." Owen said, "Look at this." He opened a series of PDF documents. "I found these on Carter's private server access when I was grabbing the video." Owen explained, "I copied them to the card just in case." I leaned in. It was a dossier. My name was at the top. Madeline Evans, Internal Audit Liability. I scanned the pages, and the blood drained from my face. "He framed me," I whispered. "It is a contingency." Owen said, "If you survived, or if the body washed up too soon and there were questions, Carter created a paper trail, dozens of offshore accounts opened in your name, fake emails sent from your corporate address authorizing illegal wire transfers. He manufactured a history of mental instability and gambling addiction." I read a fabricated email where I was begging a loan shark for time. It was dated 3 months ago. He projected Grant's sins onto me. I realized. He took Grant's gambling debt and made it look like mine. So if I walk into the police station and say, "My father tried to kill me," Carter pulls this out. "Exactly," Owen said. He tells the police. "My poor daughter had a breakdown. She was stealing from the company to pay off criminals. She must have jumped off the boat in a fit of guilt. And suddenly, you are not the victim. You are the perpetrator. The police investigate you for embezzlement. I sat on the edge of the bed. The trap was perfect. It was a double bind. If I died, they won. If I lived and tried to fight them legally, they destroyed my reputation and sent me to federal prison. "We are dead," Owen said, his voice breaking. "Madeline, we are actually dead. We cannot go back. We cannot go to the police. We have nothing. We have the truth," I said, but it sounded hollow even to me. "The truth does not matter in court," Owen argued. "Evidence matters, and he has manufactured more evidence than we have." I stood up and paced the small room, 3 steps to the window, 3 steps back. I looked at the rain lashing against the glass. Carter Evans had thought of everything. He had used my own boring nature against me. Who would believe the quiet accountant wasn't secretly a criminal mastermind? It is always the quiet ones, people would say. But Carter had made one mistake. He assumed I played by his rules. He assumed that when faced with a superior adversary, I would fold. He assumed I was just a spreadsheet static, fixed, passive, but I was not a spreadsheet. I was an auditor, and an auditor knows that every system, no matter how complex, has a point of failure. "We do not go to the police," I said. "And we do not go to the press. Not yet." I turned to Owen. "He expects me to be dead. That is the only part of his plan that relies on faith. He needs me to be dead for the trust to transfer on Friday. If I am missing, he can push for a declaration, but if I am dead, really dead in his mind, he will get sloppy. He will start spending the money. He will start moving the assets. So what do we do?" Owen asked. "Hide in this motel for the rest of our lives." "No," I said. I reached for the burner phone I had bought at the all-night pharmacy, along with the first aid kit. It was a cheap plastic brick. "We let them mourn," I said. "We let them have their press conference. We let them think they have pulled off the perfect crime. We give them exactly what they want. Silence." I looked at the date on the phone screen. Wednesday, 2 a.m. "We have 2 days before my birthday," I said. 2 days to dismantle 100 years of my family's legacy. "Madeline," Owen warned, "you are talking about taking on Crown Tide, taking on your father. You cannot win a war against $1 billion with a burner phone and a bruised assistant." I looked at the video still on the tablet, Sloane's smile. Grant's hands on my ankles. "I am not going to fight a war," I said. My voice dropped, becoming as cold as the ocean bottom. "Wars are messy. Wars are loud. I'm going to conduct a liquidation." I cracked my knuckles. "Now is not the time for justice, Owen," I said, staring into the dark corner of the room where the shadows gathered. "Justice is for people who believe the system works. I know the system is broken because my family broke it." I picked up the credit card, the Nebraska one, the one clean thing I had left. "Now," I said, "is the time to build a trap." The neon sign of the motel buzzed outside our window, a rhythmic electric hum that matched the processing speed of my brain. It was 4 a.m. on Wednesday, in the real world, the world where I was supposed to be dead. The sun was hours away from rising over the search grid where the Coast Guard was wasting taxpayer money looking for my body, in room 12. However, the lights were fully on. I sat at the scratched laminate desk, the stolen tablet propped up against a bucket of ice. I had connected it to the motel's spotty Wi-Fi through 3 layers of VPNs. Beside me, Owen was sleeping fitfully, his breath catching every few minutes as his bruised ribs protested. I was not sleeping. I was working. My family thought they had stripped me of my power when they took my phone and my keys. They forgot that my power did not come from accessories. It came from access. The first step was securing a weapon, not a gun. I had no idea how to use one. And quite frankly, they were messy. I needed a shark. I opened a secure browser and navigated to a law firm website that looked boring enough to be a front for a funeral home. Klein Associates. There were no flashy photos of smiling attorneys. Just a phone number and a promise of complex asset litigation. Marianne Klein. She was a legend in the quiet, dusty corners of forensic law. She didn't chase ambulances. She chased hidden assets in divorces of billionaires and dismantled corporate trusts for heirs who had been cheated. She was expensive, ruthless, and terrifyingly discreet. I used the burner phone to dial her private emergency line, a number I had memorized 2 years ago during a seminar on hostile takeovers. It rang twice. "This line is for clients with retainers of over $50,000, a woman's voice answered. It was gravelly, sounding like she had just woken up or hadn't slept in a week. "If you are a telemarketer, I will sue your grandmother." "It is Madeline Evans," I said, "granddaughter of Walter Hale." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. "The news says you are currently feeding the sharks off the coast of Georgia." "Ms. Evans, dead people do not usually make phone calls." "I am not dead," I said, my voice flat. "But I need to stay that way until Friday. I need to hire you. Marianne, you don't have access to your funds, Madeline. Your accounts are likely flagged by your father right now." "I have something better," I said. "I have a roadmap. I can give you 10% of the recovered assets of the Evans estate if you help me liquidate my father." "Liquidate?" She sounded interested now. The skepticism was replaced by professional curiosity. "I don't want a defense attorney. Marianne, I want a demolition expert." I spent the next 20 minutes explaining the situation. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for sympathy. I gave her the facts: the drugged wine, the stolen tender, the altered will clause, and the evidence I had on the SD card. "All right," Marianne said. "What is the play? Do we go to the FBI?" "No," I said instantly. "If we go to the FBI now, Carter lawyers up. He claims the recordings are deep fakes. He claims I am mentally unstable. He has already planted a paper trail to support that. He drags this out for 5 years while he drains the company dry. I need him stopped now." So, I typed a command into the tablet, pulling up the Crown Tide server backend. "We go to the people who don't care about lawyers. We go to the IRS. I could practically hear Marianne smiling through the phone. "The Criminal Investigation Division, nasty bunch. They don't need a warrant to ruin your day. They just need a discrepancy." "Exactly. I am compiling a tip package," I said. "Structured data, Form 3949A, but with the supporting spreadsheets attached. I am not sending them a story. I am sending them the math." I hung up and went back to the tablet. This was where I thrived. This was the boring work Sloan mocked me for. I opened the file Owen had helped me decrypt. It was the raw ledger of Crown Tide's operating expenses for the last fiscal year. To the untrained eye, it looked fine. Fuel costs, port fees, maintenance logs. But I knew the shipping lanes. I knew that a fuel surcharge for a trip from Savannah to Charleston should be roughly $4,000, not $12,000. I highlighted the row. Fuel surcharge. Vessel 404. "Vessel 404 doesn't exist," I whispered to myself. I cross-referenced the transaction ID with the bank records Owen had stolen. The money hadn't gone to a fuel depot. It had gone to a shell company called Blue Horizon Logistics. I traced Blue Horizon. It was registered to a P.O. box in Miami, and linked to that P.O. box was a credit card statement. I opened the statement. Chanel, Paris, $8,000. The Ritz-Carlton, Cayman Islands, $15,000. Doctor, Simon Orion, Cosmetic Dermatology, $6,000. "Sloan," I said, "my sister wasn't just spending her allowance. She was siphoning operating capital from the company to fund her lifestyle, disguising it as logistics costs. It was textbook embezzlement, but done lazily. She thought no one checked the fuel logs." I compiled every single fraudulent transaction into a single, damning spreadsheet. I didn't editorialize. I just listed the date, the fake vendor, the real purchase, and the relevant tax code violation: tax evasion, wire fraud, falsifying corporate records. I sent the package to Marianne via an encrypted Dropbox. She would route it to her contact at the IRSCI as a concerned whistleblower tip. Do not arrest them yet. I typed in the instruction note. Request surveillance. Let them feel comfortable. I want to see what they do when they think the money is finally theirs. I looked at the clock. 5:30, the sun was rising. Owen, I said softly. He stirred, groaning. Are we being arrested? No, we are working. I need your help with the bylaws. Owen rubbed his eyes and sat up. The bylaws, Madeline. Your father ignores the bylaws. He ignores them because he thinks he controls them, I said. But grandfather wrote the company charter in 1982. And grandfather was paranoid. I navigated to the Crown Tide shareholder portal. This was the digital fortress of the company. Usually. Carter had the admin keys, but Walter Hale had left a back door. The dead man's switch, I muttered. When my grandfather died, he left me a safety deposit box key. Inside was a biometric scanner and a sequence of numbers. He told me it was for emergencies only. I had memorized the sequence. Of course, I memorized everything. I logged in using my standard credentials, limited access. I could see the files, but I couldn't change them. Then, I initiated the legacy protocol. I entered the 16-digit code. The screen flashed red, then green. Welcome. Administrator Hale. You are in, Owen breathed, leaning over my shoulder. You have root access. Carter doesn't know this account exists, I said. He thinks the admin rights transferred to him when Walter died, but Walter split the permissions. He kept the owner privileges dormant, tied to this code. I went to the corporate governance section. Okay, I said, my fingers flying across the virtual keyboard. I'm not going to lock him out. If I lock him out, he knows he has been hacked. He panics. He destroys evidence. So what do you do? I put a choke collar on him, I said. I am changing the signing authority thresholds. I found the clause Class A expenditures over $50,000 require dual signature from the board chairman and the majority shareholder. Currently, Carter was acting as both. I added a single line of code to the governance logic, effective immediately. All Class A expenditures require digital countersign from the trust beneficiary biometric ID. You just froze his ability to move big money, Owen said. But quietly, I corrected. He can still buy lunch. He can still pay the light bill. But if he tries to transfer millions offshore, if he tries to liquidate assets, the system will give him a processing error. He will think it is a bank glitch. He will call IT. He will yell at them. By the time he realizes it is a governance lock, it will be too late. I hit save. The system blinked. The trap was set. It was like changing the locks on the house while the burglar was still inside sleeping in the master bedroom. Now, I said, let's look at why he is so desperate. I had the spending, I had the embezzlement, but why kill me now? Why the rush? Grant's debt was $400,000. That was a lot, but not murder your daughter money for a man like Carter Evans. I dug deeper into Carter's personal financials. Owen guided me to a hidden folder labeled Estate Management. I opened a loan agreement dated 6 months ago. My breath caught in my throat. Oh, Dad, I whispered. You idiot. What is it? Owen asked. He leveraged the house, I said. The estate, the saint, Simon's mansion, the one that has been in the family for 4 generations. I scrolled through the document. It wasn't a standard mortgage. It was a high-risk, short-term liquidity loan from a private equity firm that specialized in distressed assets. He borrowed $10 million against the house, I said, reading the numbers. At 12% interest. 10 million? Owen looked sick. Where did it go? Bad investments, I said, pulling up another window. He put it all into that disastrous deep-sea mining venture in the Pacific, the one that went bust last month. I looked at the maturity date on the loan, due in full January 25th. Sunday, Owen said. 2 days after your birthday. If he doesn't pay back the 10 million plus interest by Sunday, I said, he loses the house, he loses the symbol of the Evans dynasty, he will be homeless and humiliated. That is why he needs your trust fund. Owen realized. He needs the 60 million to cover the 10 million hole before the bank seizes the mansion. He is not just greedy, I said, feeling a strange mix of pity and disgust. He is drowning. He is broke. The yacht, the parties, the image, it is all on credit. I looked at the loan terms again. There was a clause standard for these types of predatory loans. Acceleration clause. The lender reserves the right to recall the loan immediately if the estimated value of the collateral drops by more than 20%, or if the primary guarantor's credit rating is downgraded. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. We are going to make him lose the house, I said. How? Marianne knows the compliance officer at this private equity firm, I said. When we send them the proof that Carter is under investigation for tax fraud and embezzlement, which he will be. Thanks to our tip to the IRS, his credit rating effectively hits 0. The bank will get spooked. They will invoke the acceleration clause. They will call the loan, Owen said. And they won't wait until Sunday, I said. They will serve the foreclosure notice immediately, probably during business hours on Friday. Friday, Owen whispered. The day of your memorial service. The day he thinks he is inheriting a kingdom, I said. Instead, he is going to find out he doesn't even own his throne. I closed the laptop. My head was pounding, but I felt energized. This was the difference between us. Carter and Sloane used drama. They used drugs and stormy seas and physical violence. They tried to create a movie scene. I used the fine print. I turned to Owen. We need to get ready to move. We cannot stay here another night. But first, I need you to do one thing. Anything, he said. I need you to write down every single conversation you heard them have about the logistics of my death, the timeline, the alibis, everything. Why? Because, I said, standing up and stretching my stiff back. When the house of cards falls, I want to make sure they are standing underneath it. I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. The rain had stopped. The world looked gray and washed out. They used the sea to kill me, I said, watching a stray dog trot across the wet parking lot. I will use the books to bury them. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room when you are watching your own obituary being drafted on live television. It is surreal, dissociative, and in my case, tactically useful. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, the volume on the television turned down low. The local Savannah news station was running a special segment titled, Tragedy at Sea, the Heiress Lost. They showed a photo of me from 3 years ago, looking uncomfortable at a charity gala, wearing a dress Sloane had forced me to buy. Madeline Evans, heiress to the Crown Tide shipping fortune, remains missing and presumed dead, the anchor announced, her voice practiced in that somber. Professional grief broadcasters wear like a costume. Her father, industrialist Carter Evans, issued a statement this morning pleading for privacy as the family navigates this unimaginable loss. I looked at Carter's face on the screen. He was wearing a black turtleneck and a blazer, standing outside the gates of our family estate. He looked shattered. His eyes were red-rimmed. His posture stooped. It was a masterclass in performance art. If I didn't know he had ordered his assistant to drug my champagne, I would have sent him a condolence card myself. He is good, Owen said from the desk, where he was monitoring the data stream from the Crown Tide servers. He almost looks human. He is rushing, I noted, pointing at the screen. Listen to the timeline, the reporter continued. Sources close to the family say Ms. Evans fell overboard late Monday night during rough seas. However, initial reports suggested the distress call wasn't made until early Tuesday morning. See, I said, leaning back. The timeline is drifting. Carter told the police Monday night to account for the tide, but Sloane told the press Tuesday morning because she forgot the script. They are improvising. It does not matter if the story is messy, Owen argued. It only matters if the judge signs the paper. He was right. The clock was the only enemy that actually frightened me. It was Thursday morning. My birthday was tomorrow. Carter had less than 24 hours to get a judge to declare me missing with presumption of death to trigger the inheritance clause. Usually, that process takes years, but Carter had friends in high places, and he was burning through political capital like jet fuel. I picked up my burner phone. It was time to remind them that ghosts can haunt you long before the funeral. "Mary Ann," I said when the lawyer answered. "I have the update from the courthouse." Mary Ann Klein said, her voice crisp. "Your father's legal team filed an emergency motion an hour ago. They are citing extraordinary circumstances and clear evidence of fatality to expedite the probate transfer. They want the trust unlocked by noon tomorrow." "Let them file," I said. "Do not block the motion." "Madeline, if the judge signs that, Carter feels safe." I interrupted. "I need him to feel safe. I need him to think he has won, but I want to make him sweat for the cash." I looked at the tablet screen where I had access to the back end of the family's operational accounts, the ones I had quietly modified the signing authority for yesterday. "Mary Ann, has the IRS surveillance team started their monitor?" "Yes," she confirmed. "Based on your tip package, they opened a preliminary file this morning. They have a warrant for a passive tap on the Crown-Tide corporate lines and key personal devices to monitor for wire fraud. They are listening. Madeline. But they won't move until they hear a crime being committed." "Good," I said. "Then let's give them something to listen to." I hung up and opened a new window on the laptop. I didn't hack anything this time. I simply logged into my own personal email account, the old one, the one Carter thought was buried at the bottom of the Atlantic along with my phone. I composed a new message. Recipient Grant Hale. Subject, no subject. I typed 7 words. "You know I hate being lied to." That was it. No threat, no accusation, no "I am alive." Just a sentence I had said to him a dozen times during our relationship when he tried to hide his gambling losses. I set the delivery time for right now. "Sent," I whispered. "That is risky," Owen warned. "If he shows Carter—" "Grant is a coward," I said, watching the message sent notification fade. "Cowards do not run to the alpha when they are scared. They panic." I closed my eyes and visualized the scene. Grant would be at the mansion, probably in the guest house, nursing a drink. His phone would buzz. He would see my name. For a second, he would think it was a glitch. Then he would open it. The guilt would hit him first, then the terror. Was it a scheduled email? Was I alive? Was I watching him 10 minutes later? Mary Ann texted me. The wire just lit up. Grant called Carter. "He is hysterical." I exhaled. Got him. I could only imagine the conversation. Grant screaming that I was haunting him, Carter screaming back, incriminating himself with every reassurance, telling Grant to shut up, telling him the body is gone, telling him the plan is solid, and the IRS agents, sitting in a windowless room in Atlanta, were recording every single word of it. "We are building the coffin," I said to Owen. "Now we just need the nails." "Speaking of nails," Owen said, gesturing to his screen, "you need to see what your sister is doing." I walked over to the desk. Owen had the internal document flow of Crown-Tide visible. There was a file transfer in progress, originating from Sloane's laptop IP address. "She is uploading a contract," Owen said, "to a private server in the Cayman Islands." I squinted at the document header. Agreement for sale of future equity. She is selling her shares, I realized, a laugh bubbling up in my throat. She is selling shares she does not even own yet. Sloane was even greedier than I had calculated. She couldn't wait for the probate court. She couldn't wait for the trust to dissolve. She was making a backroom deal with a predatory lender, a vulture fund, to sell 40% of her expected inheritance for immediate cash. She is selling Crown-Tide stock to a third party without board approval, I said. That is a violation of the corporate charter, but more importantly, she is selling assets that currently belong to me. If she signs this, Owen said, It is securities fraud. Federal. Is she signing it? Owen tapped a key, bringing up the signature page. She is using DocuSign. The cursor is hovering. I watched the screen. The little digital pen icon flickered. Sloane Evans, who thought she was the queen of high society, was about to sign her own federal indictment for a quick payout of $5 million. Do I stop it? Owen asked, his hand hovering over the abort connection command we had set up. We can crash her internet, make the upload fail. No, I said sharply. Let her sign. But if we stop her, she is just a spoiled brat, I said cold. If she signs that document, she is a felon. Let her finish. We watched in silence as the digital signature appeared on the screen. Sloane Evans. Done, Owen said. The file is sent. Archive it, I ordered. Add it to the IRS packet. Mark it as priority evidence active fraud. I walked back to the window. The rain had started again, a light drizzle that blurred the neon lights of the motel sign. We had the embezzlement. We had the attempted murder recording. We had the wiretap of the panic call. And now, we had securities fraud. But it wasn't enough. Not for me. I didn't just want them in prison. I wanted them destroyed. I wanted to see the look on Carter's face when he realized that the boring, quiet daughter he had underestimated was the one holding the shovel. The memorial service is tomorrow at 2 p.m, I said. At the estate. Yes, Owen said. The governor is coming, and the press. It is the perfect stage, I said. Carter loves an audience. I turned to Owen. We need to leave tonight. We need to get to St. Simon's before the security perimeter is fully locked down. We can't just walk in the front door. Madeline, everyone knows your face. You are the dead girl. We are not going in the front door, I said, and we are not going as guests. I picked up the tablet and opened the schematics for the Evans estate. I knew that house better than the architect who built it. I knew that the wine cellar had a ventilation shaft that was never sealed properly. I knew that the security system had a blind spot in the delivery bay because Carter was too cheap to pay for the extra camera. We are going to be the technical crew, I said. What? Carter wants a tribute video, I explained. I saw the email traffic. He hired an outside AV company to set up a massive LED screen on the lawn. He wants to play a montage of Madeline's best moments to make the crowd cry before he announces he is taking over the company. I smiled, and it was the coldest thing I had ever felt. We are going to help him with that video, I said. I have some footage I think the governor would like to see. You want to hijack the broadcast, Owen said, understanding dawning on his face. I want to give him a gift, I corrected, a parting gift from the daughter he killed. I went to the closet and pulled out the clothes I had bought at a thrift store near the motel. Black cargo pants, black hoodies, nothing designer, nothing distinctive, just shadows. Pack everything, I told Owen. Wipe the fingerprints from the room. We leave no trace. As we packed, I felt a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone. The grief was gone. I was operating on pure, cold logic. Carter thought he was the protagonist of this story. He thought he was the tragic hero bearing the weight of a dynasty. He didn't realize he was just the antagonist in a revenge thriller. I picked up the SD card, the one with the video of my murder. I placed it carefully in a heavy-duty protective case. Owen, I said. Yeah. When we walk into that house tomorrow, I said, zipping up my jacket, I don't want you to think about the pain. I don't want you to think about your ribs or the bruises. I looked him in the eye. I want you to think about the numbers, because tomorrow, we balance the books. We stepped out of the motel room into the humid Florida night. The air smelled of rain and exhaust. I didn't look back. Madeline, the victim, died on the boat. Madeline, the auditor, was going to work. We got into the beat-up sedan I had bought for cash from a mechanic down the street, another transaction that wouldn't appear on any Evans family ledger. I started the engine. It rattled, but it ran. Ready? I asked. Owen nodded. He looked terrified, but he also looked determined. Ready? I pulled out of the parking lot, merging onto the highway that led north, toward home, toward the people who wanted me dead. I drove in silence, the rhythm of the road matching the rhythm of my plan. Step 1. Secure the perimeter. Step 2. Infiltrate the system. Step 3. Execute the payload. My father liked to say that business was war. He liked to quote Sun Tzu and Clausewitz at the dinner table. He thought he was a general, but he was about to learn a very important lesson. One that every good accountant knows. You can lie to the shareholders. You can lie to the board. You can even lie to yourself, but eventually, the math always wins, and I was the math. The rain had stopped, leaving the air over Simon's Island thick with humidity and the smell of wet asphalt. We were less than 5 miles from my family's estate, but we were currently parked in the service alley of the King and Prince Beach Resort. It was Thursday evening. My memorial service was scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, but I had one loose end to tie up before I attended my own funeral. Grant Hale, my fiancé. The man who had held my hair back when I was sick, who had picked out the china patterns for our wedding, and who had then watched calmly as my sister drugged my champagne. "Are you sure he's going to show up?" Owen asked from the passenger seat of our beat-up sedan. He was adjusting the frequency on a small black receiver. "He received your email this morning. He must be terrified." "Grant is terrified," I said, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. My skin was pale, and there were dark hollows under my eyes that no amount of adrenaline could hide. But I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a hunter. But Grant is also greedy, and greed overrides fear every single time. That is the one constant in his psychological profile. I had Marianne, my shark of a lawyer, set the bait. She had used an associate, a forensic accountant named David, who could pass for a wealthy European investor to contact Grant. The pitch was simple, a rush job to redesign the interior of a 150-foot yacht docked in Savannah. Budget was no object. The client wanted to sign the contract tonight because they were leaving for Monaco in the morning. Grant, with his gambling debts ostensibly paid, but his spending habits still voracious, would not be able to resist. He needed to feel important. He needed to feel like he was a player in the industry, not just Carter Evans' son-in-law. "The room is wired," Owen said, handing me an earpiece. Marianne's team secured the private dining suite at the back of the resort restaurant. David is there now. The cameras are rolling. Legal chain of custody is established. "Good," I said. I put the earpiece in. "I am going in through the kitchen. The manager owes me a favor from when I audited his supplier contracts 3 years ago and found out he was being overcharged by 20%. I slipped out of the car. I wasn't wearing my hoodie anymore. I was wearing a sharp, black blazer and trousers I had bought with cash at a boutique an hour ago. I needed to look like Madeline Evans. The CEO, not Madeline Evans. The survivor. I entered the hotel through the loading dock, navigating the corridors with muscle memory. The private dining suite had a small service antechamber, separated from the main room by a heavy velvet curtain and a decorative screen. It was the perfect blind spot. I slipped into the antechamber and stood in the dark. Through the gap in the curtain, I could see into the well-lit dining room. David was sitting at the mahogany table, looking bored, tapping on a gold pen. A bottle of expensive scotch was open. 2 minutes later, the door opened. Grant walked in. Seeing him made my breath catch in my throat. Not from love, but from a sudden, violent surge of nausea. He was wearing a navy suit, one I had bought him for his birthday. He looked polished, handsome, and tragically somber. He was wearing the mask of the grieving fiancé perfectly. "Mr. Sterling," Grant said, extending his hand. "I appreciate you meeting me. It has been a difficult week." "I heard," David said, his accent a vague, unplaceable European lilt. "My condolences. I was surprised you agreed to come. Given the circumstances, the news says your fiancé is still missing." Grant sighed, a heavy practice sound, and sat down. He unbuttoned his jacket. "It is what Madeline would have wanted. She was always so practical. She would not want me to stop living just because, well, because of the tragedy. I clenched my fists in the dark. Practical. That was his word for me. Boring, practical, useful. Besides, Grant continued, pouring himself a drink without asking, business stops for no one, and I have a responsibility to the Crown-Tide legacy now. With Madeline gone, the family is relying on me to step up. Is that so? David asked, leaning back. I thought the company was controlled by her father. Carter is the visionary. Yes, Grant said, taking a large sip of scotch. The alcohol seemed to loosen his shoulders. But he needs a right hand. Madeline, she was sweet, but she was weak. She didn't have the stomach for the high-stakes world we operate in. She preferred her spreadsheets to the actual game. And you do? David asked. Have the stomach? I do what is necessary, Grant said. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Between us, Mr. Sterling, once the legalities are settled tomorrow, I am going to be named Executive Vice President of Operations at Crown-Tide. Carter and we have a vision for the future. We are going to modernize, expand. The old ways died with Madeline. Owen's voice crackled in my ear. We have that on audio, clear as day. I felt a cold calmness wash over me. He was selling my death as a corporate restructuring strategy. That sounds impressive, David said. But surely, the legalities are complex. I read about a trust fund, a clause about her age. Grant waved his hand dismissively. Formalities. Carter has handled it. The timeline was tight. I admit, we had to make sure everything aligned before Friday, but it is done. Friday, David pressed. That is her birthday, correct? Tomorrow. Grant nodded. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. 25, the big quarter century. If she had made it to 25, the trust would have locked in. She would have controlled everything. Can you imagine? A girl who gets panic attacks in boardrooms controlling a global logistics fleet? He chuckled. It was a dark, ugly sound. No, it is better this way. For the company, for the family. We just needed her to disappear before the birthday. That was the only hard deadline. I stepped forward. My hand gripped the velvet curtain. Just needed her to disappear, David repeated, glancing toward my hiding spot. That sounds like you were under pressure. Pressure creates diamonds, Grant said, flashing that charming smile, the one that had convinced me to say yes to his proposal 6 months ago. And speaking of diamonds, once this contract is signed and my position is official, I am looking to upgrade my lifestyle. This yacht project could be the start of a beautiful partnership. I think you are right. Grant, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. It is time for an upgrade. Grant froze. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. He didn't turn around immediately. He looked like his brain was refusing to process the audio input. I pushed the curtain aside and stepped into the light. Hello, Grant? He turned slowly. His face went through a rapid, grotesque transformation. Confusion, disbelief, terror, all the blood drained from his skin, leaving him looking like gray putty. He dropped the glass. It hit the table, shattering, sending scotch soaking into the white tablecloth. Madeline, he stammered. He scrambled backward, his chair screeching against the floor. No, you are dead. I saw you. You saw me unconscious, I corrected, walking slowly toward the table. You saw Sloane drag me. You saw Carter give the order, but you didn't check my pulse, did you? Grant, you were too worried about the rug. Grant hit the wall. He was shaking violently. This is a ghost. I am hallucinating. The stress. I am not a ghost, I said, stopping 3 feet from him. Ghosts do not hire forensic lawyers. Ghosts do not record conversations. I pointed to the smoke detector on the ceiling, where a tiny red light was blinking. Grant's eyes followed my finger, widening in horror. Mr. Sterling is not an investor, I said. He is an associate of Marianne Klein, And this entire meeting is being live-streamed to a secure server at the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Grant's knees gave out. He slid down the wall, collapsing onto the carpet. He looked small, pathetic. "Madeline, please," he wheezed. Tears began to stream down his face. Real tears this time, born of self-preservation. "I didn't want to do it. Carter made me. He forced me." "Forced you?" I asked, my voice devoid of sympathy. "Did he hold a gun to your head? Or did he just open a checkbook?" "I was in debt," Grant cried. "They were going to kill me. Maddie, the bookies, they said they would break my legs. Carter paid them off. He saved my life." "So you traded my life for yours," I said. "One life for one life. I suppose that is fair in your twisted economy. But that wasn't all, was it?" I leaned down, bringing my face level with his. "You mentioned a title, Executive Vice President. That was the cherry on top, wasn't it? You didn't just want to be debt-free, you wanted to be important." I, Grant stammered, snot running down his nose. "I love you, Madeline, I swear." I tried to stop them. I told Sloan it was too dangerous. "You told Sloan to be careful with the rug," I said softly. I reached into my blazer pocket. Grant flinched, as if he thought I had a weapon. I pulled out my engagement ring. It was a vintage sapphire, surrounded by diamonds. I had loved this ring. I had stared at it for hours, imagining our future children, our future home. Now, it just looked like a piece of cold rock. "You like shiny things, Grant," I said. "You always have. That was your problem. You stared at the shine so long you stopped seeing the rot underneath." I dropped the ring onto the scotch-soaked tablecloth. It made a dull thud. "I am returning this," I said. "I don't need it. I have something much more valuable for you." I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I tossed it onto the table next to the ring. What is that?" Grant whispered. "That," I said, "is a copy of the wire transfer Carter sent to your bookie in Miami. $400,000, dated 3 months ago, and next to it is a copy of the employment contract you signed yesterday, effective the day after my death. Consideration for services rendered." Grant stared at the envelope as if it were radioactive. "You asked me what I was going to do," I said. "I am going to give you a choice, a very simple, binary choice, the kind you like." I stood up straight, looking down at him. "Option A. You walk out of here, you go to the memorial tomorrow, and you play your part, you pretend I am dead. And when the federal agents swarm the estate, you go down for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and racketeering. You will get 20 years. Minimum. Carter will throw you under the bus to save himself. You know he will." Grant was sobbing openly now, his hands clutching his knees. "Or option B," I continued. "You become a witness. You sit right here with Mr. Sterling, and you write down everything, every conversation, every date, every time Carter threatened you. You give us the map to the bodies. If I talk, Carter will kill me," Grant whispered. "Carter is finished," I said. "He just doesn't know it yet. But if you talk, Marianne can cut a deal. You still go to prison. Grant, I am not saving you. You are going to prison for fraud. But maybe, just maybe, you get out in 5 years instead of 20. Maybe you get a cell where you don't have to worry about looking over your shoulder." I checked my watch. "You have 2 minutes to decide," I said, "because I have a funeral to attend tomorrow, and I need to get my rest." Grant looked at the ring, then at the envelope, then at me. He saw no love in my eyes. He saw only calculation. He saw the boring, practical girl who had finally decided to balance the ledger. "I'll sign," he choked out. "I'll sign anything." "Good," I said. I signaled to David. "Take his statement, and David, make sure he spells my name right." I turned and walked out of the room. I didn't look back at the man I had planned to marry. He was already a ghost to me, a line item I had written off. I stepped back into the service corridor where Owen was waiting. He looked at me with wide eyes. "You destroyed him," Owen whispered. "No," I said. adjusting my blazer. He destroyed himself. I just handed him the receipt. We walked back to the car. The night air felt cooler now. The humidity had broken. "One down," I said, getting into the driver's seat. "Two to go. Tomorrow is going to be—" Owen hesitated. "A show," I finished. "It is going to be a show, and we are going to make sure the finale brings the house down." I started the car. The engine purred. I felt a strange sense of anticipation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dreading a family gathering. I was looking forward to it, because this time, I wasn't bringing a gift. I was the gift. The adrenaline from breaking Grant had faded, replaced by the dull, heavy ache of responsibility. It was 2 a.m. on Friday. My memorial service was 12 hours away. I sat in the passenger seat of the sedan, parked in the shadow of a warehouse district in Savannah. Owen was asleep in the back, his breathing ragged but steady. I was wide awake, staring at the laptop screen, looking at the sprawling organizational chart of Crown Tide Maritime, 2,415. That was the number of people employed by my family's company: dock workers, crane operators, ship captains, mechanics, administrative assistants, people with mortgages, people with children in college, people who had nothing to do with my father's greed or my sister's vanity. If I simply destroyed Carter, if I let the FBI raid the headquarters and freeze every asset, Crown Tide would collapse. The ships would be impounded. The payroll accounts would be locked. 2,415 people would lose their livelihoods because my father wanted to buy a bigger life than he could afford. I cannot let the ship sink just to drown the captain. I whispered to myself. I needed a surgical strike. I needed to separate the cancer from the patient. I opened a secure chat window. I had one card left to play in the business world, a connection I had made 3 years ago at a logistics conference in Singapore. Jonathan Vane, CEO of Harborwick Freight, Crown Tide's biggest competitor. Carter hated Vane. He called him a soulless corporate vulture. But I knew Vane was simply a pragmatist. He liked efficiency, and right now, I was about to offer him the most efficient deal of his life. I typed the message, "Mr. Vane, this is Madeline Evans. I am not dead. I am currently conducting a hostile restructuring of my family's estate. I have a proposition regarding the Crown Tide Atlantic Fleet. Call me on this secure line if you want the ships without the debt." I waited. It was late, but CEOs of logistics empires do not sleep. 3 minutes later, the phone rang. "Ms. Evans?" Vane's voice was calm, not shocked. That was why I liked him. "I must say, your obituary was premature. We can discuss the details later," I said, keeping my voice professional. "Here is the situation. My father has leveraged Crown Tide to the hilt. He is insolvent. By tomorrow afternoon, the federal government will likely move to seize his assets. If that happens, the fleet sits in port for years during litigation. And you want to prevent that. I want to save the jobs," I said. "I have prepared a clean asset separation. I am willing to sell you the operational contracts and the Atlantic Fleet, the ships that are fully paid off, for 60 cents on the dollar. The condition is that you absorb the workforce, you keep the crews, you keep the dock staff, you recognize their seniority." There was a silence on the line as Vane calculated the numbers. "And what happens to the toxic assets, the leveraged properties, the bad loans?" "They stay with the Crown Tide holding company," I said. "They stay with Carter. When the walls come down, he will be left with the debt and the empty shell. You get the business. The employees get to keep their paychecks. I get the satisfaction of knowing my father is king of a graveyard." "You are selling the family silver to save the servants," Vane noted. "I am selling the future to save the present," I corrected. "Do we have a deal in principle?" "Send me the audit," Vane said. "If the ships are clean, I will have my lawyers draft the acquisition offer by noon. We can announce it the moment you return." I hung up. I felt a weight lift off my chest. I had just dismantled my inheritance, selling off the company my grandfather built, but I knew Walter Hale would have approved. He cared about the ships and the men who sailed them, not the brand name on the hull. Now, I had to make sure Carter couldn't loot the treasury before the deal went through. I woke Owen up. "We have work to do. I need you to log back into the finance server." Owen rubbed his eyes and sat up, groaning as he stretched his bruised ribs. "What are we hunting?" "We aren't hunting," I said, opening the dashboard for the corporate accounts. "We are locking the doors," using the administrator access I had activated yesterday. I pulled up the daily cash flow monitor. It was lighting up red. "Look at this," I pointed to the screen. "Carter is panicking." The log showed a dozen attempted wire transfers in the last hour. $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, all directed to offshore entities. "He is trying to drain the operating accounts," Owen said. "But the system is rejecting them." "Because I set the signature threshold," I said, a grim smile touching my lips. "Every time he tries to move more than $5,000, the system asks for the beneficiary biometric ID. That is me. He thinks it is a glitch. He is hitting retry over and over again. He is creating a paper trail." Owen realized. This is classic structuring, smurfing, trying to break a large transaction into small ones to evade detection. "Exactly," I said. "He is so desperate to get the money out before the memorial service that he is committing a fresh federal crime every 4 minutes, and the IRS tap is recording every keystroke." I watched the screen as another transaction failed. Access denied. "He is going to call the bank," I predicted. When the computer doesn't work, Carter screams at a human. "Which bank?" "Crescent Pier Bank," I said. "The one that holds the mortgage on the mansion and the credit line for the company." I opened a new email window. It is time to pull the rug. I attached a file that compiled evidence of Carter's attempted smurfing transactions from the last hour, along with the proof that the collateral for his loans, the company's stock, was about to become worthless because of the investigation. I sent it to the chief risk officer at Crescent Pier Bank. Subject material: adverse change notification. Crown Tide Maritime. "What happens when they get that?" Owen asked. "Banks are cowardly," I explained. "When they see federal investigation and money laundering, they panic. They will trigger the material adverse change clause in the loan agreement. They will call the debt immediately. They will freeze Carter's personal accounts to cover their exposure." I hit send. "By 9 o'clock this morning," I said, "Carter Evans will go to buy a coffee and his card will be declined." "You are stripping him naked," Owen said softly. "I am just balancing the books," I replied. "Wait," Owen said, leaning closer to the screen. "Look at the inventory logs. Something weird is happening in the procurement database." I squinted at the lines of data Owen was highlighting. Vendor A, H, Fine Arts, invoice corporate office decor. Amount $400,000. Status pending payment. Vendor estate jewelry exchange. Invoice client gifts. Amount $250,000. Status pending payment. "Sloan," I said, shaking my head. "She is trying to cash out." "She is selling personal items to the company?" Owen asked. "No," I said, tracing the transaction path. "She is trying to sell her jewelry and art to pawn shops, but she is billing it through the company as business expenses so she can pocket the cash without paying taxes. Or perhaps she's trying to get the company to buy her own assets at inflated prices to extract cash." I looked closer. "No, it is simpler. She is selling the physical assets, the Warhol in the hallway. The diamond necklace grandmother left her to private dealers, but she is asking them to pay the company shell account she controls in the Caymans, likely to hide the income from her own creditors, or she is issuing fake invoices from the company to pay herself for items she already owns." It was messy. It was desperate. It was the flailing of a woman who knew the party was over. "Do we block it?" Owen asked. "No," I said. "Let the transactions sit in pending. The system won't release the funds because I locked the threshold, but the attempt is logged. It proves she is looting the company. It proves she knows the end is coming." I sat back, the blue light of the laptop illuminating the car. We had blocked the exits. We had secured the employees. We had poisoned the money supply. But there was one thing missing. Digital evidence is great, I said to Owen. But juries love physical evidence. They love paper with wet signatures. They love things they can hold. Owen hesitated, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. It looked like a receipt. I didn't tell you this before, he said, his voice quiet, because I wasn't sure if we would make it this far. But if you really want to nail the coffin shut, you need the black box. The black box. Carter has a safe, Owen said. Not the one in the mansion, not the one at the bank, a floor safe, in the old port office, the one down by the condemned pier where he started. I know that office, I said. He hasn't used it in 10 years. It is full of rats. He uses it, Owen corrected. He goes there once a month, alone, no cameras, no security detail. What is in there, Owen? The originals. Owen whispered. The original partnership agreement with the shell companies. The ledger where he wrote down the bribes to the Port Authority in his own handwriting. And the modified trust documents he forged 2 years ago. Just in case he needed to challenge Walter's will. My blood ran cold. He forged documents to challenge the will. He practiced, Owen said. He has pages of him practicing your grandfather's signature. If we find those, it proves premeditation going back years. It proves this wasn't just a desperate act to save the house. It proves he has been planning to steal your birthright since the day Walter died. I looked out the window. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. A bruised purple dawn was breaking over the marshlands. We need that box, I said. It is risky, Owen warned. The port office is on Crown Tide property. There are night watchmen, and if Carter finds out we are there. Carter is busy, I said. He is busy rehearsing his eulogy. He is busy yelling at his bank. He is busy wondering why his wire transfers aren't going through. I started the car engine. The vibration traveled up my arms. We go now, I said. We get the box, and then we go to the memorial. Madeline, Owen said. If we get caught at the port, we miss the memorial. The plan fails. We won't get caught, I said, putting the car in gear. Because I am not going in as a thief. I am going in as the owner. I drove toward the port, my mind racing. The pieces were all there. The clean company for Vane, the debt for Carter, the prison cell for Grant, the fraud charges for Sloan. But that box was the difference between a white-collar crime and a Shakespearean tragedy. That box was the proof that my father didn't just kill me for money. He killed me because he hated that I was the one Walter chose. Owen, I said as we merged onto the highway, you said he goes there once a month. Yes. Does he have a key? A combination, Owen said. He keeps it in his head, but I saw him type it in once, reflection in the window. I looked at the battered man beside me. He was the assistant who was supposed to be invisible, the furniture, and because Carter treated him like furniture, Owen had seen everything. You are the most dangerous person in this story. Owen, I said. He managed a weak smile. I'm just the accountant. Madeline, we are the boring ones. Remember? Yeah, I said, pressing the accelerator, speeding toward the coast where the cranes of the Crown Tide port rose like steel skeletons against the sunrise. And today, the boring ones are going to burn the house down. I visualized the port office. It was a small, brick building isolated from the main terminal. It would be quiet at this hour. The shift change wasn't until 6. We had a 1-hour window. 1 hour, I said aloud. 1 hour to grab the last nail. And then, I said. My eyes fixed on the road. We go to a party. The Evans estate on St. Simon's Island was a testament to old money and new debt. A sprawling white antebellum mansion framed by ancient oaks dripping with Spanish moss. It sat on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Today, however, the manicured lawns were transformed into a stage set for a tragedy that was as expensive as it was fake. It was 2 in the afternoon on Friday, my 25th birthday. From the vantage point of the security van parked a quarter-mile down the service road borrowed from Marianne's private investigator contacts, I watched the live stream feed. We had tapped into the event's production cameras. The resolution was crystal clear. "Look at them," Owen whispered, leaning over my shoulder. "It looks like a royal wedding, not a funeral." He was right. The driveway was lined with black SUVs and luxury sedans. The guests were filing in Savannah's elite. Business rivals, politicians, and social climbers who wouldn't miss a chance to be seen, even if the occasion was the death of a girl they barely knew. They wore black, but it was fashionable black. Designer sunglasses, tailored suits, dresses that showed just the right amount of respectful skin. And there, standing at the entrance to the main marquee, was my family. Carter Evans looked devastatingly handsome in a bespoke charcoal suit. He was shaking hands, nodding solemnly, playing the role of the stoic patriarch to perfection. Every few minutes, he would dab his eyes with a linen handkerchief, careful not to smudge his makeup. Yes, makeup. I could see the foundation on his collar. He had hired a stylist for his daughter's memorial. Beside him stood Sloane. She was wearing a vintage black Dior dress that I knew cost more than my first car. A veil of black lace covered her face, but I could see her hands. They were busy. She was clutching her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Zoom in on her phone," I instructed Owen. He tapped the screen. The image blurred, then sharpened. Sloane wasn't texting condolences. She was on a luxury car auction site. Lot 400 or 2025 Ferrari Roma Spider, current bid, $320,000. "She is shopping," I said, my voice flat. "At my funeral?" "She thinks the money is hitting the account at 5 p.m., Owen said. "She is spending the advance." And then there was Grant. My former fiancé stood a few feet away from the family, looking like a man who was waiting for a firing squad. He was pale, sweating despite the cool ocean breeze. He kept glancing toward the side of the tent where a table was set up with legal documents and a notary public. That was where the transfer of the trust would happen immediately after the service. "He looks like he's going to vomit," Owen noted. "He knows I am watching," I said. "He knows every word he says is potential perjury." I shifted my gaze to the center of the lawn. A massive LED screen had been erected, framed by white lilies. It was currently displaying a slideshow of my childhood photos, me on a pony, me at graduation, me looking awkward at a debutante ball. The images were chosen carefully to make me look sweet, innocent, and passive. This was the narrative Carter was selling Madeline the angel. Madeline the fragile. Madeline who needed to be managed, even in death. "Is the package in place?" I asked into my headset. "Affirmative." Marianne's voice came through. She was inside the perimeter, posing as a legal observer for the trust. The technical director received the drive 10 minutes ago. It was labeled, "Tribute Video, from Family." The production team didn't even check it. They assumed it came from Carter's assistant. "Carter's ego is our best asset," I said. "He loves a grand gesture. He won't preview it because he wants to be surprised by his own magnificence." I watched on the screen as the service began. A string quartet played something mournful and expensive. The governor of Georgia took the podium first, speaking about the tragedy of a young life cut short and the resilience of the Evans family. Then, it was Carter's turn. He walked to the microphone slowly, letting the silence build. He gripped the lectern with both hands, looking out over the crowd of 300 people. "My friends," Carter began, his voice breaking perfectly on the second word. "Today, we do not just mourn a daughter, we mourn a future." He paused. A camera zoomed in on a tear rolling down his cheek. "Madeline was quiet," Carter continued. "She was not like me. She did not seek the spotlight. She loved the sea. She loved the peace of the water. It is a cruel irony that the very thing she loved took her from us." I scoffed. "I hated the ocean. I got seasick until I was 12. He knows that." "He is rewriting history," Owen said. And in her honor, Carter said, his voice gaining strength, I am announcing the creation of the Madeline Evans Memorial Foundation, a charitable trust dedicated to marine conservation. I will personally oversee this fund, ensuring that her legacy lives on. Translation, I muttered. A tax shelter where he can dump the assets he is stealing from me. But, Carter said, raising a finger, Madeline would not want us to stop. She would want Crown Tide to sail on. She would want her family to be strong, and so, with a heavy heart, I accept the burden of carrying her torch. He looked toward the technical booth. Giving a subtle nod, this was the cue. We have prepared a short video, Carter announced, a tribute to the beautiful spirit we lost, a reminder that as long as we remember her, Madeline will live forever. He stepped back, wiping his eyes again. The crowd hushed. All eyes turned to the massive LED screen. Here we go, I whispered, in the control booth. The technician, a young guy in a polo shirt, who just wanted to get paid, loaded the file from the USB drive I had sent. He didn't know the drive contained a partitioned executable file. He didn't know that once he clicked play, the file would lock the system, disabling the stop button and overriding the audio controls. Wait for it, Owen said, his hand gripping the back of my chair. On the screen, the music started. It was the soft, melancholic piano track Carter had requested. The first image appeared, a professional portrait of me from last year. The crowd sighed collectively. Then, the screen flickered. A glitch, no, a transition. The piano music warped, slowing down until it sounded like a demonic growl, then cut out completely. Silence hung over the lawn. Then, a new sound filled the speakers. The quality was different, raw, echoing, recorded in a confined space. Clink. It was the sound of a champagne glass hitting a table. On the giant screen, the image of my smiling face dissolved. In its place was grainy, high-contrast black and white footage. It was the salon of the Caldera. The crowd gasped. They were confused. Was this a home movie? A behind-the-scenes memory? Then they saw me, slumped on the couch, unconscious, and they saw Sloane. Her voice boomed across the lawn, amplified by the concert-grade sound system. She is heavier than she looks. All that boring weight. Sloane, standing in the front row, dropped her phone. Her hands flew to her mouth. Grant, who had been staring at his shoes, looked up and turned a color of white that shouldn't be possible on a living human. Carter froze. He stood near the podium, his face a mask of absolute confusion. He looked at the technician and made a cut-it gesture across his throat, but the video didn't stop. On screen, Grant appeared. Just grab her arms. Sloane, careful with the rug. The crowd began to murmur. A ripple of unease spread through the guests. This wasn't a tribute. This was a crime scene. Turn it off, Carter hissed, his voice audible over the microphone he had forgotten to mute. Cut the feed. The technician was frantically hitting keys, but the screen remained locked. Then came the audio overlay, the recording Owen had made of Carter. Clean it up. No traces. I want the grieving process to start at 0800 tomorrow. The voice was unmistakable. It was the same baritone that had just delivered the eulogy. The murmurs turned into shouts. People were standing up. The governor looked around nervously, signaling his security detail. Carter lunged toward the technician's booth. Abandoning his stoic persona, I said, turn it off. It is a fake. It is AI. But then, the final image appeared on the screen. It wasn't a video. It was a document. A bank transfer. Sender Carter Evans. Recipient Grant Hale's bookie. Amount $400,000. And below it, a single line of text, typed in bold white letters against a black background. Happy birthday, Dad. The silence that followed was total. It was the silence of a bomb that had detonated, but hadn't yet cleared the dust. Carter stood in the middle of the lawn, panting. He looked at the screen, then at the crowd. He looked at Sloane, who was trembling. He looked at Grant, who was on his knees. Then, he looked at the camera, the security camera I was watching him through. He knew, in that second, he knew I wasn't dead. He knew I was the one pulling the strings. "Madeline," he whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a curse. "Good," I said, watching his world disintegrate from the safety of the van. "You pushed the button, Dad. You chose the time. You chose the audience." I reached for the door handle of the van. "Is the tactical team ready?" I asked Owen. "IRSCI and the marshals are at the gate." Owen confirmed. "They were waiting for the probable cause. You just broadcast it to 300 witnesses." "Then let's go join the party," I said. "I have a speech to make." I stepped out of the van into the bright afternoon sun. The air smelled of jasmine and sea salt. It was a beautiful day for a resurrection. I straightened my blazer. I checked my reflection in the side mirror one last time. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a ghost. I looked like the CEO of Crown Tide Maritime. "Let's go, Owen," I said. "Don't forget the black box." Owen grabbed the heavy steel case from the back seat, the one we had retrieved from the port office 3 hours ago, the one containing the original forged documents Carter had hidden for years. We walked toward the estate gates, past the confused security guards who were too busy listening to the chaos on their radios to notice 2 people in business suits walking in. The sound of sirens began to rise in the distance, a wailing chorus approaching from the highway. Inside the gates, the scene was pandemonium. Guests were shouting, reporters were shoving microphones into faces. Sloan was screaming at a cameraman. I walked through the chaos, calm and steady. The crowd parted for me. Not because they recognized me, they still thought I was dead, but because I walked with the momentum of a freight train. I reached the edge of the lawn, just as Carter was trying to grab the microphone again to spin his lie. "Please," he shouted. "This is a hack, a malicious attack by our competitors. My daughter is dead." "Is she?" I said. My voice wasn't amplified, but in the sudden lull, it carried. Carter turned, Sloan turned, Grant turned, 300 heads swiveled. I stepped onto the grass. The sun hit my face. "Hello, Dad," I said. "I heard you were starting a foundation in my name. I thought I should come and sign the paperwork myself." The hours between the heist at the port and the memorial service were not spent sleeping. They were spent tightening the noose. We had retrieved the black box from the rat-infested office at the docks. We had the original forged trust documents. The smoking gun that proved my father's premeditation went back years, but physical evidence, while satisfying, was liable to disappear if not immediately cataloged. It was Thursday night. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy and humid. We had retreated to a new safe house, a small, nondescript rental property near the marshes that Marianne Klein, my lawyer, kept for high-risk clients. It smelled of lemon polish and anonymity. I sat at the kitchen table, which was now covered in a sea of paper. Marianne sat across from me. She looked like a woman who subsisted on espresso and litigation. She wore a sharp gray suit, even at 11 at night, and her eyes scanned the documents Owen and I had provided with laser-like intensity. "This is the kill shot," Marianne said, tapping a manicured fingernail on the stack of files. "The video is emotional leverage. The audio is incriminating. But this," she picked up the forged trust amendment we had pulled from the black box. "This is federal prison time, mandatory minimums. He forged a notary seal. He forged your grandfather's signature on a document filed across state lines. I don't just want him arrested. Marianne," I said, signing the last page of a thick affidavit, "I want him paralyzed. I want to make sure that by the time he steps up to that podium tomorrow, he doesn't control a single dollar." I pushed the document toward her. It was the emergency shareholder directive. "Once you file this," Marianne said, "you are declaring war. You are activating the material breach clause in the corporate charter. You are effectively seizing executive control of Crown Tide based on gross malfeasance before a judge even rules on your death. File it," I said. "Timestamp it for 8 in the morning. I want the courts to have it the moment they open, exactly 6 hours before the memorial begins." Marianne nodded and placed the document in her leather briefcase. "And the IRS." "The package is ready," I said. I handed her a heavy, Encrypted hard drive. It contained everything: the footage from the yacht, the audio of the murder plot, the AIS logs proving the ship's location was falsified, the forensic accounting of Sloane's embezzlement, the wire transfer records for Grant's gambling debts, and now, scans of the forged documents from the black box. "My contact at the Criminal Investigation Division is waiting," Marianne said, weighing the drive in her hand. "He is calling it the Evans dossier. They are mobilizing a task force. They will be at the gates of the estate by 1 in the afternoon. They are just waiting for the signal." "The signal will be the video," I said. "When that video plays, when the world sees them dragging my body, that is probable cause for immediate arrest." Marianne stood up to leave. She paused at the door, looking at me with a strange expression. "You know, Madeline, in 30 years of practice, I have never seen a client audit their own murder." "I told you," I said, my voice steady. "I am good at the boring stuff." After Marianne left, the silence in the house was deafening. Owen was in the living room, monitoring the secure feeds on his laptop. "Madeline," he called out, "you need to see this." I walked over. He had the Crown Tide Asset Management System open. "Carter is moving again," Owen said. "He knows the cash accounts are locked. He knows the banks are spooked, so he is trying to sell the furniture." I looked at the screen. A pending sale notification was flashing. Asset Savannah Logistics Warehouse 4B, buyer Red Clay Holdings, price $4 million. He is trying to quick sell a warehouse, I realized. At 1 in the morning, who buys a warehouse at 1 in the morning? Red Clay Holdings is a shell company for a shady developer Carter knows, Owen explained. The price is half the market value. He is trying to dump the asset for quick cash to pay off the immediate interest on the mansion loan before the ceremony. "If he gets that $4 million, I said, "he can stall the foreclosure. He can buy another week." I pulled out my burner phone. "Not on my watch," I texted Marianne. "Emergency injunction. Block the sale of Asset 4B. Cite pending litigation regarding ownership title." 3 minutes later, the status on the screen changed from pending to suspended, legal hold. "He just lost his lifeline," Owen said. "He is going to be furious," as if on cue. Owen's personal cell phone, the one he had turned back on just to monitor incoming threats, buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his face went pale. "It is a text," he whispered, "from an unknown number." "Read it," I commanded. Owen swallowed hard. "We know you are not in the water. Owen, we know you are hiding. If you say a word to anyone, we will finish what we started on the boat. Silence is your only life insurance." I took the phone from his hand. "Screenshot it. Send it to the cloud." "They know I am alive," Owen said, his voice trembling. "They might be looking for us." "They suspect you are alive," I corrected. "If they knew where we were, they wouldn't be texting. They would be kicking down the door. This is a desperation play. Carter is trying to scare a ghost." "It works," Owen admitted, rubbing his bruised ribs. "No," I said firmly. "It is evidence. Witness tampering. Intimidation. Add it to the pile. Owen, every threat they make just adds another year to their sentence." I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. The reflection in the glass showed a woman I barely recognized. My hair was pulled back tight. My eyes were hard. "What about Grant?" Owen asked. "Has he tried to reach you since the meeting?" 12 times, I said, glancing at my burner phone. "He is panicking. He realizes he signed a confession, but he hasn't been arrested yet. He doesn't know what the game is." My phone buzzed again. Another call from Grant. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent a single text message. "Tomorrow, the world will hear the video. Wear a nice suit." I turned the phone off. Let him sit with that. Let him sweat through his sheets. A tired enemy makes mistakes. "Madeline," Owen said, hesitating. "Are you sure about the video playing it at the memorial? It is public. It is humiliating. Everyone will see you vulnerable. Everyone will see you being dragged like a sack of potatoes." "That is the point," I said. I spent my whole life hiding my vulnerability to please them. I let them treat me like I was weak. Tomorrow, I am going to use that weakness as a weapon. I walked over to the closet where I had hung my outfit for the next day. Sloane would be wearing couture. Carter would be wearing a $5,000 suit. I had chosen something else. It wasn't a black morning dress. I wasn't mourning anyone. It was a navy blue pantsuit. Simple. Utilitarian. The kind of suit a CEO wears to a board meeting to announce a merger. But underneath, I would wear a white linen shirt, the same brand I used to wear when I worked at the docks. I am not going dressed as an heiress, I told Owen, running my hand over the fabric. I am going dressed as the auditor. You need to sleep, Owen said. We have to move at 10 in the morning to get into position. I can't sleep, I said. I need to check one last thing. I sat back down at the computer and accessed the event planning emails for the memorial service. I had hacked into the event planner's server 2 days ago. I scrolled through the latest correspondence between Carter and the production team. There was an email sent just an hour ago. Subject urgent. Broadcast changes. I opened it. From Carter Evans to production lead. Ensure the tribute video is pushed to the global live stream feed. I want the press in New York and London to see the depth of our loss. Do not geofence the broadcast. Make it public. I started to laugh. It was a quiet, dry laugh that shook my shoulders. What is it? Owen asked. He ordered the live stream, I said, pointing at the screen. He explicitly ordered the production team to broadcast the video to the world. He thinks it is his masterpiece of grief. He wants the investors in London to see him crying so they won't pull their funding. He is digging his own grave, Owen said. And he is paying for the shovel. He is not just digging it, I said. He is televising it. This was the final lock, the final piece of the puzzle. If I had just played the video on the lawn, Carter could have claimed it was a local prank. He could have spun it. But by ordering a global live stream, he was ensuring that the evidence of his crime would be recorded on servers around the world instantly. There would be no taking it back, no scrubbing the internet. It is perfect, I whispered. I closed the laptop. The plan was locked. The legal team was ready. The federal agents were on standby. The bank accounts were frozen. The assets were blocked. The evidence was preserved. And the victims were ready to walk out of the grave. I went to the small bathroom to splash water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. For 24 years, I had been Madeline the quiet one, Madeline the disappointment, Madeline the girl who didn't fight back. That girl died on the caldera. The woman looking back at me was someone else. She was cold. She was precise. She was dangerous. I went back out to the living room. Owen was asleep in the chair, the shotgun we had bought for protection resting on his lap. I sat down on the floor, leaning against the wall, and waited for the sun to rise. I thought about the ocean. I thought about the cold water. I thought about the moment I realized they had left me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I felt a strange, icy clarity. Morning came slowly. The sky turned from black to bruised purple, then to a pale, sickly gray. At 7 a.m., I stood up. I showered and dressed. I put on the navy suit. I braided my hair back tight, away from my face, no makeup, no jewelry. Except for a watch, I checked the time. 7:30. Owen, I said, shaking him awake. It is time. He woke up with a start, gripping the gun. Then he saw me. He blinked. You look, he trailed off, like a ghost. I asked. No, he said, standing up. You look like the boss. We packed the equipment, the laptops, the hard drives, the black box. We walked out to the van. The air was thick with the promise of heat. This is it, Owen said as we climbed in. There is no turning back after today. Once we step onto that lawn, life as we knew it is over. Life as we knew it ended on Monday, I said. Starting the engine. I looked at the map on the dashboard. The route to the estate was highlighted in blue. Owen, I said, gripping the steering wheel. Yeah. When we get there, when the video plays, don't look at the screen. Look at Carter. I want you to remember his face. I will, Owen said. I pulled out of the driveway. Today isn't a resurrection, I said, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. Resurrections are miracles. This isn't a miracle. I accelerated, the van merging into the morning traffic. This is a hostile takeover, I said. And today, I am not returning to the family. I am appearing. We drove in silence toward the coast, toward the mansion, toward the stage where my father was waiting to perform his greatest lie. He had prepared a funeral. He had prepared a tragedy. He had no idea he had actually prepared a confession. I checked the time. 8 o'clock. Marianne would be filing the papers right now. The first domino was falling. I smiled. Happy birthday to me, I whispered. The silence that followed my entrance was not the respectful silence of a memorial service. It was the terrified, suffocating vacuum that occurs when a dead woman walks across a lawn to confront her murderers. I stood 5 feet from the podium. The sun was beating down on my navy suit, but I did not sweat. I looked at my father, Carter Evans, up close, without the filter of a camera lens. I could see the cracks in the porcelain mask. His foundation was settling into the deep lines of stress around his eyes. His lip was trembling. A microscopic spasm that betrayed the collapse of his entire world. Behind him, the massive LED screen was still frozen on the final frame of the video. I had hijacked the bank transfer record showing the payment for my murder. Madeline, Carter whispered. The microphone caught the sound, broadcasting his fear to the 300 guests, the governor, and the global livestream audience. You are supposed to be dead. I finished the sentence for him. My voice was calm, pitched low and steady. I know, Dad. I read the timeline in your files. I was supposed to be fish food by Tuesday morning. I was supposed to be a tragedy you could monetize by Friday afternoon. The crowd erupted. It was a wave of noise shouts, gasps, the frantic clicking of press cameras. The governor was being hurried away by his security detail, his face pale. "Security!" Carter screamed, his voice cracking. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Get her out of here. This is a sick prank. This woman is an imposter. My daughter is dead." He looked desperately at Sloane. Tell them this isn't her." Sloane was standing by the VIP seats. She looked like a statue draped in expensive black lace. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and recognition. She knew. She had spent a lifetime mocking me, belittling me, calling me boring. She knew exactly who I was because she was the one who had watched me dissolve into the background for 24 years. "It is her, Daddy," Sloane whispered, and the sound was picked up by the boom mic of a nearby camera crew. "It is Maddie." "Shut up," Carter roared, lunging toward her. "She is mentally unstable. This is a deep fake. That video is AI generated. It is a corporate attack." "It is not AI. Mr. Evans," a deep voice boomed from the edge of the lawn. The hedges behind the marquee parted. 12 agents wearing windbreakers emblazoned with IRSCI and U.S. Marshals stepped onto the grass. They moved with the synchronized precision of a military unit, fanning out to secure the perimeter. Leading them was Special Agent Miller, the man Marianne had been coordinating with for the last 48 hours. He held a warrant in one hand and a pair of handcuffs in the other. "We have the metadata. Carter," I said, taking a step closer to the podium. "We have the raw footage from the yacht's security system, which Owen Price recovered. We have the audio recordings from the bridge." "Owen," Carter blinked, looking around wildly. "Owen is dead. He died in the accident. I am right here, Carter." Owen stepped out from behind the phalanx of federal agents. He was still bruised, his ribs taped under his shirt, but he stood tall, in his hands. He held the heavy steel case, the black box we had retrieved from the port office that morning. "I kept the books, Carter," Owen said, his voice carrying across the lawn. "I kept the real books." Carter looked at the steel case, and the blood drained from his face completely. He knew what was in there. The forged trust documents, the bribery ledgers, the handwritten notes detailing the plan to liquidate my inheritance. "This is entrapment," Carter hissed, backing away until he hit the support pole of the tent. "You cannot prove anything. I have lawyers. You have nothing?" I interrupted. I turned to the crowd. I saw the faces of the Savannah elite, the people who had drunk my father's wine and laughed at his jokes while he plotted to kill his own child. "You all came here to mourn a tragedy," I said. "But the real tragedy isn't that I died. It is that my father bet the entire Evans legacy on the idea that I was too stupid to survive." I looked back at Carter. "You wanted the $60 million in my trust fund. Dad, you needed it to pay off the loan on this house. Didn't you?" Carter's eyes darted to the side. "That is a lie. This estate is clear." "Actually," I said, pulling a folded document from my blazer pocket. "It is not." I held the paper up. "This is a foreclosure notice from Crescent Pier Bank," I announced, "effective as of 10 o'clock this morning. When the bank received evidence of your attempted money laundering last night, those 12 wire transfers you tried to push through to the Cayman Islands, they invoked the bad boy clause in your mortgage agreement." I took a step closer, dropping the voice to a lethal whisper that only he and the front row could hear. "You don't own this house anymore, Dad. You don't own the company. You don't even own the suit you are wearing. It was bought with embezzled corporate funds." Carter slumped. The fight went out of him all at once. He looked small, old, and pathetic. The confident patriarch who had stood on the stage 5 minutes ago was gone, replaced by a bankrupt criminal. "I did it for the family," he wheezed, tears streaming down his face. "I did it to save us." "No," I said coldly. "You did it to save yourself." Agent Miller stepped forward. "Carter Evans, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering." As the agents moved in to cuff him, the crowd watched in stunned silence. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. "Sloane Evans," Miller continued, turning to my sister. Sloane shrieked as an agent grabbed her wrists. "Get off me." "My dress. You are ruining the silk. I didn't do anything. It was all him. I just wanted the car." "You are under arrest for securities fraud, embezzlement, and accessory to attempted murder." Miller recited, "We have the logs of the company assets you sold this morning, Sloane, and we have the video of you laughing while you drugged your sister." They dragged her away, her heels carving furrows into the perfect lawn, her screams echoing off the facade of the house she no longer lived in. Then there was Grant. He hadn't moved. He was kneeling on the grass, his head in his hands. He looked up at me as I approached. His face was wet with tears and snot. "I signed," he whispered. "Maddie, I signed the statement." You said if I signed." "I said you would get a choice," I replied, looking down at him. "And you made it. You chose to cooperate." I signaled to Agent Miller. "Grant Hale is a cooperating witness," I said. "Take him into custody, but keep him separate from the others." Grant nodded, sobbing with relief. He stood up, allowing the agent to cuff him. He looked at me one last time, searching for some sign of the woman who used to love him. "I am sorry," he choked out. "I know," I said, "but sorry does not balance the ledger." I watched as they loaded my family into the back of the waiting federal vehicles. The flashing lights of the police cars reflected in the windows of the mansion. The guests were dispersing, fleeing the scene like rats escaping a sinking ship. I stood alone on the lawn. The screen behind me had finally gone dark. It was over. 6 months later. The house was small. It was a single-story cottage with weathered cedar shingles, perched on a dune overlooking a quiet stretch of the Atlantic coast in Maine. It was 1,000 miles away from the humidity and the pageantry of Georgia. I sat on the deck, a mug of coffee in my hands, watching the gray waves roll in. The air was crisp and smelled of salt and pine. I picked up the newspaper on the table. The headline on the business page read, "Harborwick Freight completes acquisition of Crown-Tide assets." It had been a busy 6 months. The trial was swift. With the mountain of evidence, Owen and I had compiled the black box, the videos, the bank records. Carter didn't even try to fight. He pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He is currently serving his time in a maximum security facility in Colorado, where there are no ocean views. Sloan got 15 years. Her defense was that she was manipulated by our father, but the video of her laughing while I was unconscious destroyed any sympathy the jury might have had. Grant got 5 years. His testimony sealed Carter's fate. He sends me letters sometimes, apologizing. I don't open them. I burn them in the fireplace. As for the company, I kept my word. I sold the clean assets, the ships, the contracts, the legitimate operations to Jonathan Vane at Harborwick Freight. The deal included ironclad guarantees for the workforce. 2,415 people kept their jobs. The Evans name was erased from the hulls, painted over with Harborwick blue. But the crews remained. I liquidated the rest: the mansion, the yacht, the luxury cars. Everything was sold at auction. The proceeds went to pay off the creditors and the lawsuits. When the dust settled, there was still the trust fund, the $60 million that had started this war. I didn't want it. It felt blood money. I took $5 million for myself, enough to buy this cottage, invest conservatively, and ensure I never had to worry about money again. I gave $5 million to Owen Price. He testified, entered witness protection for a few months, and then emerged with a new name and enough capital to start his own forensic accounting firm in Chicago. We talk once a week. He is the brother I never had. The remaining $50 million I donated it. I established the Caldera Rescue Fund. It is not a tax shelter. It is a fully operational nonprofit that funds independent Coast Guard units, provides legal aid for maritime workers, and supplies advanced survival equipment to commercial crews. I took a sip of my coffee. The wind was picking up. People asked me why I moved to the coast, why I would want to live near the ocean after what happened. I looked out at the water. It was vast, indifferent, and powerful. My family thought the sea was a place to hide secrets. They thought it was a void where they could dump their problems, but they were wrong. The sea doesn't hide things. It returns them. It washes everything clean eventually. I put the mug down and leaned back, closing my eyes. I listened to the rhythm of the surf. It didn't sound like a threat anymore. It sounded like a heartbeat. My name is Madeline Evans. I am 25 years old. I am an auditor, and for the first time in my life. The books are balanced. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on Madeline's revenge. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Emma Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach even more people.